Sorry. Morning. I'm actually going to do a little experiment. My stepdaughter's home. Normally she'd actually be asleep still, but surprisingly she's awake. If she hears me, like I said the other day, she'll come out. She's always trying to find a way to get my attention. So if she does, you'll hear her in the background. She'll probably ask me, who are you talking to? And I'm probably just going to say, nobody, I'm done, whatever, you know, and she'll go back to her room. She's honestly not supposed to be here today. She was supposed to be over again with her grandmother the other day, almost literally after I hung up with doing my last video. I got a phone call saying from the grandmother, come get her, I can't deal with her. And it turned out she had, well, self-sabotaged, as I discussed yesterday. It's kind of her thing. She'd been there about a week, so honestly I wasn't surprised. I was actually a little surprised it didn't happen sooner. After about the 4th day, tensions fly. They all have their own trauma to deal with, so they can't handle hers, and she can't handle theirs, nor should she have to. But now that she's technically an adult, they technically don't have to handle her either. I just choose to, just because, like I said, she's got a lot going on. So it's hard to send her off on her own. When I've sent her off on her own, even in younger years, she's made very poor decisions and put herself into dangerous situations almost immediately. Like, there wasn't even a break in between. It was almost like day one. Her one doctor had taken her off. She was on Seroquel. Sorry. And she was on a pretty high dose. We were concerned about the long-term effects with that medication. So she said, you know, I want to try and wean her off. And to see how she does. The first day of even... Well, honestly, she weaned her completely off. And the first day she went without the medicine, she almost got expelled. And I'm calling the doctor back, like, this ain't working. And it was just because another self-sabotaging thing. She wasn't thinking. She was on the bus. She was accused of saying the N-word. Whether she did or not, I don't know. However, she doesn't do a very good job of looking innocent. She makes herself even more look guilty. Even when I know she hasn't done something, she automatically becomes super defensive. And that comes across as, wow, you're hiding something because you did it. So even when I asked her, I mean, she just dissolved into tears, curled up in a ball, and just, I didn't do it, you hate me so much. And I'm like, oh my, I didn't say any of that. Unfortunately, at her age, I mean, I sent her to go get a job, and she ran off with the manager the same day. I was like, what? And of course, she came home crying, saying she'd made a mistake. No, she was not assaulted. She just, again, she wants attention so bad. This is why I worry. I could just see her being trafficked. It's that easy. Just because that's the kind of behavior she has. I don't lock her down in the house. I don't tell her she can't go anywhere. I've let her go places. I've let her go out. But I have monitors on her phone. So, you know, if any red flags pop up in her text messages, like she knows I can read her text messages. Originally, we put that up on there to protect her from her mom. Because mom had a habit of sending her text messages and then calling the police on her since the age of, well, even before she lived with me. And I mean like 11, 10 years old. So those, she would, you know, of course, claim and accuse her of sending her text messages. And the app that I have, it's called Guardian. It, even if they delete the text messages, they're still there. So with that app, I was able to say, hey, look, she never sent you those text messages. Her mom wasn't prone to, like, making things up. She would just twist everything and then justify it. That was the biggest difference between her and Cindy, was Cindy would flat out make things up. I mean, gross, terrible things. But Mom, she would over-exaggerate things. She would leave her part out of it, like, you know, she didn't do anything wrong. Or she would turn the events around. You know, she was hitting my stepdaughter was hitting back. She would say my stepdaughter was hitting her first, and then therefore she had to defend herself by hitting her back. And that is how she did things. She would never blatantly make anything up. But she twisted it, and she made it big. She never denied anything she did. Which is the weirdest part to me, because honestly, I mean, she'd flat out tell child services, yeah, I did this. And it was like, okay, are you guys going to do anything about it? No. The hospital once called child services because close to time Mom was about to die, a few months prior. Mom was still, and this is even before her back surgery. She had once again committed my youngest stepson. And in the hospital documentation, it says that the staff, nurses, and doctors witnessed Mom coming up there screaming at him, saying that she didn't want him, that he wasn't allowed to be discharged back to her home because she's in chemo, and therefore he could infect her, even though she's in the hospital, like, right in front of his face. What? And she's telling him, you know, what a bad person he is, and she's calling him names, and I don't really want to repeat a lot of them. I mean, the therapist that he had since he was 7, so witnessed all of this, called child services multiple times herself. Whenever I speak about her, and I've included her even in these treatment meetings, even though she's no longer his therapist, she's had to discharge him, obviously, because he's up, you know, in the treatment facility. I still have her part of those meetings. And when we've had to talk about Mom, and I talk about her like this, she says, Jess is being nice. This woman called him a rapist. She told him that her cancer was his fault, and that he was the reason why she was going to die. And that is all true. She really did do that. Those are big. I mean, one of the events the therapist likes to discuss the most, because she was physically there and saw this happen, and actually yelled at Mom because she just had enough herself. When the little girl was born, his youngest half-sister, like I said, she was about 2 when Mom died. She was almost 3, actually. So she was 2 going on 3. So she's able to walk at this point. And therapist comes over. My youngest stepson is outside with the little girl, and the little girl starts to wander towards the road. Well, he rushes over to pick her up. And, you know, little 2-year-olds, they don't have, well, they have breasts, but they don't have breasts. Anyway, the point is, because he picked her up underneath her shoulders, and his thumb was where her breast would be on both sides, because that's how you pick them up. She yelled, put her down, you're molesting her. You're gonna grow up to be a rapist. Don't touch her again. Like, whoa. And the therapist said she, like, had to take a breath. Like, whoo. Like, what? No. Stop twisting that in his head because he's literally starting to think that he's just a bad person. And so the next time the little girl starts wandering towards the road, he doesn't go after her. Mom looks at him again. She gets up in his face and she's screaming, "You just want her to die, don't you? Why aren't you going to go get her? Why aren't you stopping her from going into the road? Go get her." And the therapist actually said, "Catherine, which is it? You cannot have it both ways. You literally cannot. Do you want him to go get him, or don't you? Because you just told him not to touch her. And now you're yelling at him because he's not doing it. What the hell?" And of course, Catherine's response was, "You're fired. I don't need you anymore." Catherine always did this. She was constantly, if you did not agree with her, you were the enemy. It didn't even matter. Like, even if it was a small disagreement. Therapists actually would say to me and my husband that they had to be very careful with their wording, because if they gave her a little bit of advice and she took it to the extreme, like they would say, you know, maybe you should ground him, you know, take away his game system. She would ground him for 3 months. And then she would go to the therapist and say, "Now he's worse because you told me to do this." They didn't tell you to ground him for 3 months. They didn't tell you to lock him in his room and tell him he's forbidden to do anything. I mean, she didn't just take away the game system. She stripped the room. And she locked him in it. She did the same with my stepdaughter before my stepdaughter left. And again, the older one, her excuse for the way she treated my stepdaughter was, "I didn't get to bond with her because child services took her away at 3 days old." It's like, and whose fault is that, Catherine? And she would always say it was my husband's fault for some reason, even though he wasn't even there. I mean, he had to go to his anger management classes and things like that, and he did everything that was required of him. He wasn't the greatest guy. I mean, he had his own trauma to deal with, but he went to family classes. Actually, when he and I moved in together, part of the thing was he was still under the guise of child services when we had our own daughter. And so they wanted to make sure that everything was okay. Okay, fine. I honestly, back then, I liked this caseworker. Her name was Marlene. She has since retired. She's, you know, run into us a few times, and she's told us that she hated that place because it's all about the paperwork, never about the children anymore. Anyway, the point is, she would come over and, you know, she would give real advice and suggest, you know, good places to go. But she didn't make us do it. We chose to do it. We chose to go to family classes that we found through our own therapists. And he'd actually gone there once with the ex-wife, and all they would do is fight. And so when we went, the therapist hosting these things, you know, said my husband was a completely different person compared to being with his ex-wife. Which, honestly, every man that was in that woman's life was a total disaster. Even the last one, I mean, she had the little girl with him. He stayed there about 6 months, and then it was, you know, he's not doing enough. He's never good enough. Nothing's ever good enough. And unlike the children who are stuck with her because child services won't take them, and we can't convince them anyway, he could leave. And he did. And they had a custody agreement, yada, yada, yada. But that woman could drive anybody insane. Even her own mother. Her own mother. The one that my children and my stepchildren see. Mostly my stepchildren, obviously. Knew what her daughter was. Again, that the reason that they go over there is she was a safe spot. They would run away from mom constantly. Grandma told me of a story where it was dead January, and in Pennsylvania it gets very cold. It was like 2 a.m. and here comes my stepson, my youngest one. And He's trying to get into the apartment. He's buzzing the buzzer trying to get in. And it's 2 a.m. And he comes upstairs. He doesn't even have a coat. It's -10. It's like he's wearing short sleeves. He's wearing just like some kind of shorts. Not like summer shorts. More like go to bed shorts. Not even basketball shorts. She just said they were very like almost fleecy. But there's no jacket. It's -10, and he has walked probably about 5 miles. All downhill, thankfully, but in -10. Grandma said she called Mom and said, you know, your son's here, and I'll just keep him here overnight, and then you can come get him in the morning. And she said, no. No, you will make him walk back right now. And Grandma said to her, Catherine, he won't make it back. It is -10. It is dark. It's cold, and he doesn't have a jacket. He doesn't even have boots. He won't make it back. He will die going back. And she said, if you don't, this is her logic, if you don't send him back, I'm going to call the police and say you're kidnapping my son. See how crazy that is? It's like, what? And she did. She really did. She called the police on her own mom. And so they came there, and they started questioning the boy. And he's kind of like, he's blaming himself. Because Mom has convinced him all these years that he's the bad one. So he's trying to justify her actions for her. Like, maybe I was out of control. Maybe it was me who set her off. Even Grandma she told me she was trying to tell him, like, in front of the police, please, tell them the truth. And he kept saying, well, I was mad and I yelled at her. And I got scared because she yelled back. Maybe I shouldn't have left the house. I mean, the police did not make him go back that night. They reasoned with Mom, saying, you know, maybe you should take a break. Once again, trying to appease her. Like, oh, this would be a good opportunity for you to just have a moment to yourself. Just take it. It'll be all right. And then you can have some peace from your son because he's doing the bad things. It's like, thank you once again for reinforcing he's the bad one. The cops don't understand. Children's Services don't understand. Even the hospital did this a few times where they would say, listen, you can't do this or else you're going to go to jail. It's like, what happened to the part that he's in defense mode? What happened to the part where she attacked him first and he's just having a reaction? No wonder he can't tell the difference between right and wrong to this day. It's been 20 minutes and she still hasn't come out. It'll happen. I don't think she went back to sleep. Maybe it's because my dishwasher's running. I don't know if you guys can hear that in the background. Now that I pointed it out, maybe you can't. But I wanted to make sure all the things I need to do for the day are done before I hop on here and see how this went. I was just really surprised, like, my other kids leave, I'm going into my dining room, and I look over, and there's lights underneath her door, and I'm like, what? She's usually not, I'm usually trying to, like, bang on the door at noon, like, yo, up. I'm trying to get her to get a job right now. No one will hire her. Nobody will even call her. Because she just has so many behaviors at the places that she's already been. It's hard to justify that kind of job. Even, I mean, the first job she had was at McDonald's. She quit on Easter. The day where it was slow as Christmas, as they would say. And there was nothing going on. And they just wanted her to break down some box. She was there for 5 minutes. I dropped her off. I went over to visit my mom, who had my nephew. And I'm getting a phone call. Come get me, I quit. No, you didn't. Just go back inside. Because she would say that a lot. And she said, no, I really did this time. She'd been there for 2.5 months total. And when I pick her up, she's just, I'm not doing those boxes. The other problem is because she was partially raised by the woman who lies and convinced her to lie all the time in order to evade, consequences. She told me and 5 other people they wanted me to break down boxes. She was there for 5 minutes. I didn't even make it to my mom's. And then next thing I know, I hear her telling another story to her boyfriend, who is very over emotional at the time. I actually had to get a protection order against him. I have a 3-year protection order against him because he was threatening my life and hers. And she didn't know the difference. She thought this is love. No, it's not. No. Because he was saying, I'm protecting you by threatening to beat you up if you don't do what I say. What? And she'd be like, see, he cares about me because blah, blah, blah. And, a lot of people would say, ban her from him. Okay, let's see how that works out. I've been down this road. If you ban them, they sneak out. I need to share how I feel and how I'm concerned. I'd shared it with the school. And it was actually the resource officer who finally put the nail in the coffin with it because, she was mad that he was once again dumping her. And he was once again dumping her, and she went to the resource officer, and she told them about some of the abuse, but just like her mom, just like Cindy. She exaggerated, and then she made up. She has a neck split on. The birth control that goes in the arm. I'm sure. I've seen the way he acts, and I would never let her go over there. Never to his house, ever. That was a big no for me. It was like, okay, listen, I already know he's abusive. I'm not giving him the opportunity to physically be able to do it in, closed doors. Not happening. His mother would always try and make excuses for him, too. Oh, he's got mental problems. It's like, okay, that doesn't justify him hurting her. But she made statements to the resource officer that he would grip her arm and accidentally touch the neck split. Well, when she saw his reaction to, that must have hurt, she would say, oh yeah, and he grabs it and twists it. And I'm like, I'm sure if he was grabbing her arm and she said, ow, that hurts, or hurting that, he probably did squeeze harder. I don't think he purposely did that in the middle of the classroom and twisted it when the classrooms aren't even that big. And she's highly monitored, as is he. But that's what she said. And so the resource officer made a point to push for the protection order, which was granted. He did make viable threats towards me. He would say that he was going to come and kill me because I didn't approve of their relationship. And I actually got mad at her because she had him on speaker when he said this, and she was in her room, and obviously her room was like right there, so I could hear her just as she can hear me right now. Unless her TV's turned up or she's got her earbuds in, which is honestly what I think is happening, because she would be out here by now. And she'd be like, are you talking about me? Even if I'm not, she'll still say that. But I could hear him, and he was making the suggestion that he could come over and take me out. You know, that he could get a weapon. It wouldn't be that hard because I'm not that big. And then he, because I wouldn't let her go out with him, to his house. I wouldn't do it. I'm not purposely putting her in danger. That's stupid. So I was upset because she giggled. Here she comes. Yes. What are you doing? What are you doing? Bathroom. Okay, go. Is that Dad? No. It is not Dad. Ethan? No, it is not Ethan. It is another appointment that they're being nice about right now, so. She probably thinks it's my therapist. Took 26 minutes. My coffee cup. Actually made this one. I have a sublimation printer that can do this, but it'd be easier to read if it wasn't backwards on the video. I guess that's my fault. This is how much core time I've had that I made my own cup. About, it says, lawyered, having beaten somebody in an argument so thoroughly that there is no chance of rebuttal against your impeccable logic. My therapist says you can go that way. Sorry. You're fine. I was showing her the cup. That cup. My lawyer cup. Because I go to court all the time. You know. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I'm going to do one more thing. Because she can hear me through my other door. She'll probably still try. See, that's, I don't know if you guys could hear any of that. She kept it pretty low. She just comes out and she stops. She always looks at me dead on. What are you doing? Who are you talking to? It's like, what are you doing? And that is how we play the game. She asks me a question, I throw her a question right back. Because I'm trying to show her that, you know, communication goes both ways. Also that, you know, she doesn't have to do that every time she sees me. So I was actually surprised she didn't come over here and try and give me a hug. And she thought you guys were my dad. My dad. Oh my God. My dad's gone, unfortunately. Her dad. Again, I really don't want to get into the conversation about where he is. He's not dead. But it is a long story, and as, you know, it hurts. He should be here. He should be helping me. I shouldn't be a single parent, basically. It's not his choice. He didn't do anything wrong. I think the worst he did was, well, he lost his mind. I guess that's kind of the bottom line, which started the whole thing. He couldn't handle this anymore. He couldn't handle Cindy. He couldn't handle Catherine. He couldn't handle any of it anymore. And he tried to kill himself. In a very awkward way. Suicide by cop. I know that they did crack his skull open. And he wasn't taking his insulin, and he was very high on a lot of drugs that day. And I haven't seen him since. I shouldn't say that. I have seen him. I visit him, and we video chat, which is why she thought this was going on. But it's still a long story, and it all starts with Cindy. Starts with all the lies, and he just couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't deal. It was too much. He just wanted to be done. His own son, the oldest one, always says to me, well, of course he did. Who wouldn't? Who could handle any of that for that long? It's a miracle he's alive. He should be dead. But he's not. But he's not home. As I told his older son 2 weeks ago, when I had to call crisis on him, if, I had it my way, everything would be sunshine, Skittles, and rainbows. But we don't. We were dealt this hand, and there's a lot of things, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Hindsight's always 20/20. But I can't turn back time. I can't bring him here. He has to be parenting from afar. And even that is hard for him because he doesn't have much of a relationship with his first children anyway. Just because of the situation that was there before, where we had my stepdaughter first. And then I got the youngest one after Mom died. And then the oldest one came to me on his own when he was 18. Ran away. Honestly, I know that he's back with that woman right now. But he still texts me, he still calls me, and I'm still trying to get him resources in order to get him his own apartment. I practically had to drag him down to do the forms. He's gotten to a point where in his life he feels, things were taken from him, which they were. I mean, honestly, I understand his hatred and his anger. He lost his dad. His mom treated him like crap. The person he's living with right now gaslighted the crap out of him all the time. Made him feel like crap. Made him lie. I really just don't want to get into why Dad's not here. Because, that's a story all by itself. And if I start jumping around, it becomes confusing. Because, again, it's one of those situations where it's like, what? That doesn't happen that way. That's not supposed to happen that way. You're right. You are absolutely right. It is not supposed to happen that way. It's not supposed to happen at all. And yet it did. And this is how we have to deal with it. So he quietly, my stepson, the older one, quietly calls me, looking for advice. And I give it to him. And that woman still berates and tries to, she's trying to get back towards my other children. And I have heard him say to her, no, I am not going to get my sister over here. I am not going to get my little brother over here. I am not going to ask Jess if she could bring the kids over, because the answer is already no. And then she'll say to him, oh, it's because you believe all those things about me for her. And he'll always say, no, that's not it, because she doesn't tell me anything I don't already know. Because he lives with her, he already knows what she does. So he says, Jess hasn't told me anything. She doesn't even talk about you because you're not worth talking about. I mean, my God, if I had, you know, I know I'm talking about her in these videos, but if I had to sit here all day and talk about her, at the end of the night, I'd be like a wreck. It's hard enough to do these videos where I'm, you know, I'm almost reliving some of this stuff. I'm having my little flashbacks here and there, and it's hard to keep it together. If I had to do that every day, forget it. I would not function. Because it's just, you just live in that world of anger, of feeling cheated, feeling wronged. And you start to question yourself as to what you did. What? Why does this keep happening? Isn't it enough? Oh God, I'm going to cry again. I want to try one video where I'm not emotional, like not like super like falling apart. But can you imagine trying to live like that every day? For a while I did. Like I said, I didn't eat, I didn't function. My husband would look at me and say, you know, I would pace. And I didn't even know I was pacing. I would just back and forth all around my couch, come back around, come back around, come back around. I would call the detectives religiously to the point where I was leaving messages every day. It was, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? I wanted them to know, because the hardest part about anything is the fact that when you know, when you have witnessed, when you have seen, when you have observed, when you've been told there is abuse, and you tell somebody and nobody does anything, and then it continues. The idea of just saying, you know what, I don't see that, drives you crazy. It doesn't even compute for me. Like, it was more like, I can't live with myself unless something gets done. I cannot live with myself if I look the other way. I can't do it. It didn't matter. You know. Okay. I'm gonna slowly go backwards here. So, you know, it took 26 minutes for my stepdaughter to come out here and realize that I'm on the phone. She doesn't know with who, she doesn't know with what. Yeah. I think I talked a little bit about a trauma therapist who's since passed away. Her name, she was the one who had the unique view in all three households, and she could tell where the problems were. Her insight was so invaluable, so unique compared to other therapists. I mean, it was, you know, I could go to a therapist and I could talk to them like I'm talking here, and I could tell them things. I might be able to show them some things on my phone and bring in some documents, but they're not there with me. They subsequently kind of lived it with me, because, I mean, as these things are going on, I'm going to see my therapist weekly, and I was going to see my EMDR therapist weekly. So I'm seeing 2 therapists every week, and I'm going in there going, now this has happened, and now this has happened, and now this has happened. And this other trauma therapist, I got her to work with my stepchildren. Her name was Jillian Miller. She was fantastic. She didn't really do EMDR. What she did was more like DBT. She did things that were like called DBT. And that was her way of dealing with things. Honestly, you know, that's great. Honestly, I liked her way of doing things. EMDR has its purpose too, but sometimes EMDR doesn't work. It's not a for everybody situation. It is, well, if it works, and that's great. But there are other types of trauma therapy like DBT, which is the kind that my stepson is going through right now because he'd already done EMDR and obviously it didn't work for him. And it was more like because he was constantly causing more situations to happen. So we were focusing more on the present than we could deal with the past. And you can't do both. You need to be in a calm state. You need to be in a safe place in order to discuss your EMDR. Because, you know, who wants to talk about the worst days of their lives and then go home and constantly live more crap going on that might be really bad. And so he was constantly having police at my house. I didn't call them. The siblings did. I mean, they had a right to. The police would always say, it's a good job. But they were scared. They didn't like my youngest stepson's reactions. He is about 6 foot, 200 pounds. He broke my nose. He'll always tell you it wasn't intentional, which honestly it wasn't. No, he was going after my daughter. And I stepped in between them. And it didn't, like, punch me in the nose or anything. Honestly, what he did was he charged. And honestly, as I've said, I'm short. And I stood between them, and I have my hands up. I'm trying to, you know, block one from the other. So my daughter is concerned for my safety at this point because he's yelling. He's clearly out of control. The other siblings, you know, are, you know, I have my stepdaughter. She's actually grabbing the tiny one, my 6-year-old, who was actually 4 at the time. And she's picking her up and, you know, running out of the room to her room with the little one. She's trying to get also her brothers, her half-brothers, my sons, also into the room with her down here because we were upstairs. And my daughter is basically the same age as my stepson. And what had happened was he went at her, and what I did was I wrapped my arms around his waist, and I was just trying to hold him back. He was wearing socks, and we have a vinyl floor up there, so he fell backwards. I cuffed his head with my other hand because I was like, oh no, we're going down, and I don't want him to hit his head, but then I wasn't protecting my face. So my face is free falling to the floor, and bam. And literally, I had never really broken a bone before that moment. I remember the feeling of it when it happened. I remember the force. Honestly, it was like a tingling sensation. What had happened was it had hit so hard that this part actually had snapped forward into here. I mean, you think that my nose looks messed up now, which honestly, it was a lot worse. I hated looking at myself. But this piece had pushed completely. Sorry. Spam calls. This pushed completely in. And my son called 911. And because when it happened, it must have punctured something with the bone. Because I just remember being face down. I'm feeling that tingling sensation, that boing, 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 boing feeling. Honestly, that's the best description I have for it, but it's because it was like, it felt like there's vibrations going on. And it's like, what has happened? What's going on? And then I just feel warm liquid. And it was literally pouring out of my nose. Like like a faucet. Like, I've had bloody noses. I've never seen that before. It was just literally like straight streaming. And then it started pouring down my face when I'm starting to get up, because my stepson's looking at me and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No." Like, blood everywhere. And you would think that that might have shocked him into, you know, submission. No, it set him off more. And then he turns around and he looks at my daughter. Now I'm not there to get between them. He starts charging after her. She's running towards these stairs. And honestly, he's booking it. And thankfully, his legs are long enough. I actually grabbed his ankle as he was lifting it up to run, with my busted nose, with blood all over the place. And I grabbed it to, you know, yank him backwards, because it was like, oh my God, he's going to kill her. I literally thought he was. I thought he was going to kill her. Because when his rage gets out of control, he's not there anymore. It's blind rage. And he kept trying to do it. Like, I have his ankle. I'm like trying to football his foot, like he can't get out. Like, and I'm yelling at my other kids, "Run! Run!" They're concerned for my safety, so they're hesitant, so they don't want to leave. And I'm like, "No, get out, get out." And, you know, my stepdaughter is up there, like, grabbing them, like, "Come on, let's go, we gotta go." And, my eldest son, who's currently almost 15, he was 12 at the time. He calls 911. And here come the police. I'm trying to call his therapist, the one that's been with him since he was 7. And I'm like, "Candace, I need help. The police are coming. I'm worried." I was actually worried he was going to go to jail. Not saying that he didn't deserve it, but I was also afraid that he was going to attack one of the officers. And honestly, he literally walked out the door and it was like, "Go ahead and shoot me." And it was like, "Are you serious?" And I'm telling the officers, I'm yelling, he doesn't have any weapons. He's fine. He's just out of control. And, you know, the officer comes up and he's like, "I'm not going to shoot you." They're fully well aware of who we are. I've unfortunately, from all the experience with Cindy and their mother and losing their dad, they are fully well aware of who we are. They know my name. Not a pleasant thing to have. And I'm, you know, the officers ask me what happened. You know, they think he's punched me in the face, he's assaulted me or something. And I was like, no. You know, he did not, you know, pow in the face. He was going after his sister, that's for damn sure. But he likes to tell everybody that I tackled him. His own therapist in his treatment facility was like, "Wow, I guess you better be going into the NFL just because he's huge. How'd you do that?" I was like, I didn't. It was a fluke. It was the fact of, I just put my arms around his waist to try and counterbalance him to keep him from going after his sister. And he slipped, and he's 200 pounds, and I can't stop him from falling, and I didn't protect my face. And therefore, my nose got busted. And it actually required me to go to surgery to have it fixed. I mean, the officers kept saying, "Do you need an ambulance?" And I was like, no. I actually said no. I said, let me just call my doctor in the morning. I'll go to MedExpress is what we have here. It's like urgent care. Because, I mean, what are they going to do? And honestly, when I got to urgent care, I walk in there and I say, you know, my stepson, I believe, broke my nose. And they just looked at me and they're like, "Yeah, your nose is broken, that's for sure." I'm like, I know. But in order for me to see a specialist, I need to see you guys first. This is how the medical system works. If you need to see an ENT, you need them to tell you that you have to see an ENT, even though the nose is busted. The ENT, the ears, nose, and throat doctor, needs an x-ray. So I'm like, I'm here. to get the x-ray and the referral so I can go to the ENT. One that I'm, you know, familiar with from my own past experience with some other issues I had. Not a broken nose, thank God, but other things. I actually had a very bad deviated septum. You know, it was bad enough that he was able to justify a surgery to remove it because I couldn't breathe out my my one side. So, you know, he fixed it so I could breathe, and then my stepson busted my nose. So it was like crap. But they're like, "You sure you need an x-ray? I could just look at you and see that it's broken." And I was like, I need the x-ray for the ENT. I have huge problems with the medical system. I'm very fortunate to have good experience with the mental health situations. But when it comes to actual medical care, I feel like I'm fighting somebody half the time. Like, are you listening to me? I'm not here to make it up. I'm not here to waste your time. I'm here because I need to be here. I'm trying to skip a step. And by the time I get into the ENT, he's like, "Ooh, I hope your nose hasn't started to heal yet." And I'm like, "Yeah, me too." He's like, "Well, I had to send you for an x-ray." I'm like, "Nope, nope, here I got it." Like, skip the step, let's go. He's like, "All right, let's schedule a, what do you call it? Basically, it wasn't an open surgery, it was a closed surgery. He said, literally, "I'm putting you to sleep so that way I can go and put it back where it was, as best I can." And you know what? Do you know the worst part of that surgery? It wasn't even this. It was the fact that they had to intubate me, which is when you're asleep, it stops your breathing. So they will actually shove a tube down your throat. It impinged on the uvula, the thing in the back of the throat that if you touch it, you'll gag. When it impinges on that in the back of your throat for a long period of time, it necrotizes. Basically, the tissue inside dies. It is the absolute worst pain ever. I didn't eat for 3 weeks because it was white. It was just hanging there. I couldn't even drink water. It hurt so bad to swallow anything. I thought I was going to die. It was like, this doesn't even hurt. Like, I don't even feel this. I had a brace on there and everything. Didn't even care. That hurt. And I even went into the ears, nose, throat doctor again. And he's like, "Oh, so how's the nose?" I'm like, "It's fine. This is my problem because your ears, nose, and throat, you know what this is." And he goes, "Oh, oops. Looks like we impinged on your uvula." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I'm hurting. He's like, "Oh, it'll slough off eventually." It's like, "Oh, well, thank you. Can I have something right now? Because I can't eat." "Oh, just keep drinking water." Honestly, the day it happened, it wasn't like it was just any old day. My stepdaughter was out of control. And once again, she and now my stepson were about to go at it. And I, once again, literally trying to step in between them. And I'm like looking at them both going, "My nose just got busted, okay? Please don't hurt me." Like, I'm begging them, like, "Please, I just did this." And honestly, you know what? My nose was the second break I had. The first one was actually my right hand. A couple months prior to that, they broke my hand. And when I say they, I mean the children. My daughter did it this time. Again, not intentional. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She and my stepson, the youngest one, were bullying it out again. And she busted it. Because what she was doing was, once again, I have my hands up. I'm trying to block her. Because he's yelling on the floor, saying all kinds of horrible things. Just trying to, you know, bait her. Because he's trying to do, I'm the victim. I'm the victim. You know, you're bullying me, when he'd actually started the whole thing. He'll just like his mother, I didn't do it. Whatever. Point is, she's in her room upstairs, and I have my hands up like this. So what does she do? These 3 fingers right here. She's jumping up and down. She's trying to get at him. So she grabs these 3 fingers and pushes them all the way back. Literally, like, her pressure, like, let me see if I can do this. I'm not going to break my hand, I promise. I'm just trying to use both my hands for once. So, what had happened was, these 3 fingers, I'm standing there like this, and she grabs these 3 and pulls them. In her pressure, she's doing this, is what she's doing. And it actually went 90 degrees. And what had happened was the ring finger here, this one. So right in here is a bone. And the pressure of this one going all the way back between this bone fractured it. You actually heard the pop. That was the scariest thing. Like, my stepson heard it. He was like, whoa! Because the moment it happened, I was just like, like, oh God, that hurt. But then the pain subsided pretty quickly. And I was just holding my hand like, ow! Honestly, at the time, I thought she overextended the tendon. I heard the pop, but I could still move my fingers. So I was like, well, it hurts. Maybe she just overextended she sprained it or something. And in the middle of that, the moment this bone pops, it was a beautiful Y fracture, actually. And luckily, they would call it a boxer fracture. Usually if somebody punches, these 3 little bones will fracture. And it's usually the pinky side and the ring finger. But in this case, because the way my fingers were pulled all the way back, it was just the pressure of the ring finger. So therefore, it would have been considered the 4th metatarsal, I believe is what that's called. Yeah. So in the escalation, my stepson does what he used to do with his mom. He ran away. He ran out the door without even shoes. And I was like, oh. It was June, so, you know, it was warm. But it was nighttime, though. I mean, he's big. I don't think anybody's really going to mess with him if they see him. But he could easily be hit by a car. And if he's not thinking, maybe he'll jump in front of one, because he has been known to do suicidal things before. So after he's running out the door, I'm trying to calm the rest of them down. I figure, give him a minute. I don't think he's going to go out there and jump in front of a car right away. Because he tends to say things and not mean any of them. Of course, I take everything seriously, and I was not about to let him just be out there. But I wanted to give him a minute to calm down. Once he's away from the situation, he tends to calm down. But the problem is getting him away from the situation in the first place. He doesn't want to do it. In fact, that's part of our sessions, is like, I'm telling him, what do we do? What do we beg you to do when you're mad? Walk away. Take a minute. Reevaluate the situation. Please. And when he does that, he realizes, man, I'm out of control. So, but, you know, once he starts walking, he's more like, oh, they don't want me anymore. He starts to do that self-sabotaging thing where it's, I'm bad, I shouldn't come back. It's, you know, I'm a dangerous person, I'm bad, I'm evil, I'm never going to get any better. He's self-loathing all over the place. So I know he's not going to come back unless I go and get him. So I knew, you know, once I calmed down the other ones, I'm walking around the house. And I accidentally, I had a lot of boxes in the dining room for my business, and I'd actually brushed this hand against one of them, and it was like shock pain the whole way up my arm. I was like, oh, like I couldn't even turn the doorknob. It was that painful. It was like, what is that? Like, I thought, honestly, a broken bone would be 20 times worse. I didn't think, you know, my first experience with a broke bone, my kids broke it. Second one, my kids broke it. Haven't broken anything since. I'm gonna have to find some wood later and knock on it. It's gonna happen if I don't. You know what? Okay, cool. Because that's wood. I hand painted that. So I know it's wood. But, yeah. I couldn't drive. I kept my hand in my lap. And I went back to urgent care. Again, this was before my nose. And I went in there and you know, I wasn't going to lie. Because I know that they're doctors, and even if I, you know, get irritated with them, I know that if I lie about a break, they're gonna know, because they know how breaks happen. So I need to tell them exactly what happened. And at the time, I honestly, again, I didn't even think it was broken. I thought it was an overextended tendon because the shock pain went all the way down to my elbow whenever it was even brushed. So they said, well, let's do an x-ray anyway. And then she comes back and she looks at the x-ray and she says, oh, your fingers look fine. It must be a sprain. Here, I'll go get some bandages. And I said, okay. I'm still sitting there with my hand in my lap, just like whatever. And about 10 minutes later, actually, she comes back in. She's got a whole kit. And she's like, never mind. And I'm like, what? And she's like, I looked at the x-ray because I was only looking at your fingers. But when I looked down into your hand, your metatarsal is completely spiral fractured. I was like, oh. What? She's like, yeah, we gotta go see, oh, what are they called? I can't think today. Well, a specialist for hands. There. I'll just do that. There's actually a handful of them around here. And she said, you know, the closest one was like 10 minutes away. She highly recommended him. That, you know, everything would be okay. Honestly, I still have the thing that I kept my hand in. That thing was the coolest thing ever. But it was, I keep it on my shelf. Honestly, kind of as a reminder to my kids, relax. I don't want to get hurt again, please. So this is it. So how this worked, if I have to redo it, and I'm going to be doing this with one hand, which honestly I had to do before. So this little thing is like a button. So when it gets pressed, it gets released. And the pieces on it, it's been a while since I put this on, but honestly, this was molded to my arm. Much better than a cast. I'll tell you that much. But if I can get this thing to do it, it's been a while since I played with this thing. I use it sometimes as a brace, just because it made things feel so much easier to deal with. It's kind of like whenever you have a sprained wrist. Instead of, you know, running to the ER, now I have this. So, you know, it's one of those things where you don't have to keep it, but I do. Because it's useful. I'm going to have to put my phone down for a minute. Hang on. No, I'm going to mess with this thing for a second. Because I'm trying to remember how this even works. Okay. That's how we do it. How do we undo it? I wonder if my kids have played with this thing, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Like, did they mess with this? Because you turn it in order to tighten it. But I specifically remember pushing down. Oh my goodness, I'm an idiot. There I go again with that, too. You know what? I think it might be broken. Cars. I wonder if I can just fit my arm back into this thing. It's been 2 years. Nope, it's been way over tightened. Alright. So, oh, and this is all tangled too. Just lovely. This isn't supposed to be in here. I think my kids did mess with this. Huh. Because this part separates. And I don't know if you can see the wires in here, but this whole thing is almost laced up. So when it goes on, you turn this little knobby thing and it tightens it. It made a clicky noise because I tightened it. I'm trying to untighten it. How did I do this? I don't remember. Well, whatever. Okay, so let's just do it this way. So basically, your hand goes in like this. Okay, so this is what you'd see. My fingers are free, but the back of my hand is completely covered. So there is no one who can mess with me, and I can have freedom to move, you know, around and blah blah blah. And of course, this part also came off. If I can get it off, Velcro. As you can see, it is way over tightened. They're crossing each other. This is literally supposed to be over here. I think my kids did, because they just thought this was the coolest little device. They just liked the way it was. Come on. Why is this so hard? This wasn't this hard. Come on. I'm gonna feel like a deuce if I can't do this. Oh my goodness. This is terrible. Why can't I figure this out? Why can't I figure this out? I really can't figure out why I can't figure this out. What the heck? I can turn it in. Let it go. I'm gonna start singing. No, I'm not. I will not sing on camera. I don't care how much people say I'm okay with it. I am not. It's one of those things where I justify, like, no. No. Are you serious? I feel like an idiot. I'm just trying to remember. It's been... This happened... The hand happened in June of 2022. My nose was in October of 2022. So the same year. You know, literally. Like... I just said, you know, I've never broken a bone in my body, and I've broken 2 in the same year, within the same 6 months. You know, flabbergasted a lot of people. Actually, when I went to do the surgery, again, with my nose, they asked me, everybody always asks me, how'd you do that? How'd you break your nose? And I'd tell them, you know, what happened. And actually, I had a nurse say to me, she looked at me and she said, I don't feel like you'd be safe going home with them. It's like, well, what am I going to do? They're children. When people don't seem to understand this part. I actually battle with my own biological family about this. They feel like my stepchildren shouldn't be here and that it was a mistake for me to take them in. I don't really care what they think. It was more damaging to me if they heard that. Which honestly they did. I tried really hard to keep it out, but they would tell this to my other children. So whenever these incidents would happen, my biological children would say to them, you shouldn't be here. Nobody wants you here. And I would say to my kids, shut up. Like, they're allowed to express their feelings, but when somebody's in a rage, you don't tell them mean things because it's just going to escalate the situation more. In a calm environment, you are more than welcome to share your opinions. However, there are certain situations where it is just really detrimental not to do that, because you're just going to make it worse. Why won't this come apart? I don't understand. I feel like I'm doing something wrong. What am I doing? Just... Oh my goodness, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? Like, literally, what am I doing? This doesn't make any sense. But I'm gonna have to Google this. I can't believe I'm gonna have to Google this. Well, I'm gonna have to Google it. Give me a second. Yes, I know you're staring at my little girl's jacket, because even though it is still warm as the summer here in Pennsylvania, she said yesterday, it's gonna rain. Undoing. It is called an exos. Hold on. So that is, can I never get my thing to focus? And again, it's backwards. Of course it is. So this is lift button, pull tab. Well, that's what I was doing. Oh my goodness. Lift button. Lift button. Come on. Really? Lift the button. Lift the button. I am lifting the button. Oh my god, I probably look like an idiot. Pull the tab. I am pulling the tab. Like, what do you mean? Lift the boa button. I did. I did. Oh my god. Lift it. Pull the tab. This is the tab. I'm pulling it. Why isn't it doing it? This shouldn't be this hard. My hand was broken, man. I had to do this with one hand. Why can't I do it now? Like, literally. I couldn't even use both hands. What the hell? This is the tab. This is the tab. Oh my god. Lift button, pull tab, and then you can pull it apart. It's not pulling apart. Ooh, I heard something click. Did it work? I pulled the tab. Why isn't it working? Come on. Why? Push button, pull tab. I am. This just is not... Okay. I have come to the conclusion my children busted this thing. I am actually believing that that is exactly what my problem is. Lift button, pull tab. I am. Oh. Did I bust it? Oh, I did it. Yes. Aha! I don't know why. Man, I did this. Alright, anyway. Alright, now that I can actually do this. Oh my goodness. I can't believe I wasted all that time doing this. Okay, and then you spin it. Yeah, see, this, you're supposed to see the wires. See, honestly, there's actually a sleeve that went with this too. But this, in place of a cast, was so much better, where I'm able to actually use my hand. I mean, obviously not fully, but it kept the wrist straight. This thing is like a rock. So, I mean, it's the same as a cast, in my opinion. But I still use it. It's been a while, obviously, but I still have it. Now watch, I won't be able to take it back off. Again, I had to do this with one hand. See, how am I supposed to... That was ridiculous. I'm not supposed to have to try that hard. Maybe it's just because it was, like, rusted on there for so long. I don't know. Here's the tab, by the way. So this little thing where it said, pull the tab. I am pulling the tab. Oh, my goodness. Ha! Now, see? This must be because I just didn't do it for a long time. So, then it loosens, and you can pull the wires. This helps loosen it further, obviously. And then it comes off. Because you weren't allowed to shower with it. So I had to take it off in order to shower. And then you click the little button back in, and you turn. Can't believe this took that long. I'm not going to do that again. We're only going to tighten it so far. Because I'm not doing that again if I really need this thing. My fear is, and I've been told this is a myth. Maybe it is. I don't know. But what I was told was once a bone's been shattered, I mean, the body heals it, and that's really cool. But it's never the same again. You know, the possibility to break it again is high. So therefore, I do what I can not to do that. My little girl, you know, occasionally she'll actually come up to me and she'll almost try to whack me in the face. And I'm like, please don't. I don't want to bust my nose again. Please don't. So, okay. Well, now that I've gone over that basic stuff and complained about some things. Oh my, I'm noticing I have dark circles. Well, that's an unfortunate part of growing older and not getting enough sleep. And I don't. I also don't wear makeup, so just saying. My sister takes hours to like do her eyes and everything else. I mean, I have done makeup once in a while, but I tend not to. The moment I can get back in this house and get it off, I do. It's like I'm just soaking my face. Like, please, I'm never gonna be able to open my eyes again. And mascara is the worst. I feel like I'm literally like plucking out my eyelids, and everyone's like, oh, why don't you just wear fake lashes? Oh yes, I want to glue things to my eyes too. No thank you. Other people might feel comfortable with that, but I have contacts, and anything getting near my eyes, even the mascara, it feels very uncomfortable. It's heavy. It can get in the eye, even worse. So I just noticed that looking at there. I was like, why is that brown? And why does it look bruised? I'll tell you what, when my nose was broken, at first, the bruise was here. And then, and honestly, the doctors did explain to me why the police were so pushy with me about going to an ambulance. One, they wanted to document it, and they possibly wanted to charge him for it, which I wasn't comfortable with the police at the time. I didn't trust them very well. I didn't think all cops were bad. I had a handful that I knew who were good, and I knew they were good. And they were kind. And one of them actually still visits my grandmother, because my father's not here, and he was the one to tell us that he wasn't here anymore. He OD'd. I'll eventually get into that again. I'm sure I've actually said it a few times. He's been gone 11 years now. August 9th, 2013. Although in the paper, I think it says August 10th because the coroner found him and then they had to do cause of death and they went backwards. It was like in the middle of the night. Anyway, so, yeah. Anyway, I'm jumping all over the place. Oh, but okay, that's what I was doing. So the reason why the police wanted me to go to the hospital was because orbital socket. They said when the nose busts, there's a good chance that something else has busted too over here. And if the orbital socket gets shattered, I mean, it's one thing to have an orbital socket shatter. They're more concerned that these little pieces that shatter are going to go into your brain. Then it was like, oh, well, next time that happens, I will be sure to go to the ER. I'll probably get ignored, just like when I walked in there and I said, hey, my nose is busted. And they're like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, okay. They're like, well, what do you want us to do? An x-ray would be nice. A referral would be nice. Why am I here? It's like, why did I come here? Because I had to. Because if I call the ENT and say, hey, my nose is broke, they'll be like, says who? Chicken and the egg. Chicken and the egg. You can't go to one without the other, but you can't go to the other without the one. It doesn't make any sense. And that's why you gotta get a little pushy. But then doctors and them tend to see that as aggression, and, you know, if you challenge their position, they get even more defense. I almost was in a full-fledged argument with the doctor because I have a device that can see into the innards of my ear, and my eardrum had ruptured. And I was trying to tell him that, and he said, you can't see into your ear. And I said, I have a bluebird, sir. Yes, I can. I don't know what that is. Well, it's this little device that allows me to, well, clean my ears, but I use it purposely for the camera qualities of it. So I take the little pieces off so I can look, just to make sure, because I have so many, you know, things wrong with my face, to be honest. I can't even close my mouth. If you see me doing this jaw thing, it's because my jaw dislocates all the time. The way my jaw was formed when I was born, the upper is too small and the lower is too far back. And so when I close my mouth, this is what happens. It doesn't close. It's never done it. I've never been able to eat normal, ever. And because of the way this is angled, the only way to fix it actually is to break my upper palate. And they want to put plates in there. But then I have an additional problem. I have my wisdom teeth on my bottoms here. So they won't take them out. I have been to 3 different oral surgeons and they will not touch me. Because these 2 wisdom teeth are not only sideways, this one in particular is fused to my jawbone. And there is a nerve that goes like around here. It is the nerve that controls the feeling in your face. The roots are not normal roots. They don't just go straight down. Once again, the tooth is sideways. And the roots are fused around the nerve. So, no one will touch me. Because they said, we're going to cut that nerve. And you're never going to feel anything again. And I was like, I even asked them, I said, well, does that mean like I would look like I had a stroke or something? And they said, no, you'll look normal. It's just you'll bite your tongue off and you'll never notice. Sweet. But then I have the oral surgeons going, well, I'm not going to fix your jaw either because you have the wisdom teeth. Well, then take the wisdom teeth out. Well, we're not going to take the wisdom teeth out because you have that nerve. Okay, so I'm just going to keep dislocating my jaw, and my teeth are going to, these wisdom teeth are pressuring against my, my molars in the back to the point where they have disintegrated them because they create like a pocket. And so they are slowly destroying my back teeth. Like, I could brush them all day long and keep them clean and floss and do everything. These are my real teeth, I promise. But like, I'm missing my back 2 molars on the bottom here because this wisdom tooth completely destroyed them. This one is broken in half. So I have the upper ones on this side. Sorry. This one was also destroyed. No, wait, I take that back. I keep forgetting. My goodness, I can't talk today or think. I have my molars over here. I have my molars over here. The bottom ones. It's the bottom ones. So these two are gone. And I have one molar still left. And then the other one is broken half. And honestly, they're trying to send me to the surgeon again. To once again beg and plead to say, hey, if you're going to take that molar, maybe you can take that too. Because this wisdom tooth in particular not only is fused, not only is attached to my jaw, it has hooks on the end. And the molar that's broken half that they want to take out also hooks underneath the crown of the wisdom tooth. If I could show you the x-ray, it looks like a nightmare. It is literally like the tooth, the hook, it goes like this. It's like, what? And then the crown is right here, right up against it. So if they take this, it will hook the wisdom tooth. And they're going to scrape it, if anything, or expose it. And so they said, well, you might as well just take it out anyway. The oral surgeon will look at, I've seen them like 6 times, and they have said to me, I'm not touching that. I have been to Pittsburgh's big dentist practice who would do the jaw operation, and they say, we are not touching that. That nerve is in there. We cannot cut it. If we take that wisdom tooth, it will cut it. I have honestly, they still want me to, I've put in a call for the oral surgeon again. I'm still waiting for a call back. And honestly, I am nervous as crap that when they do this, they're going to do something that's going to cause some damage. My jaw is the worst thing that I deal with. I mean, my sight's already not the greatest. And then I have, you know, I had the deviated septum, which needed to be fixed so I could breathe properly. And now that the nose is broken, honestly, it's kind of back to a deviated septum. And then I have, you know, constant ear problems because of the pressure in my sinus capillaries, coupled with the fact that my face doesn't work. So you're seeing me smile, but honestly, my teeth don't touch. My sister used to pick on me all about it. I got picked on a lot, honestly, in school. They thought I was chewing with my mouth open. I would keep my lips closed, so when I'm eating them, but obviously my jaw is opening and closing. They can see this. They don't understand why I can't bite a sandwich. I literally have to, you know, take it into pieces, or I have to, you know, especially chicken. I love chicken. Can't eat it unless it's cut up in little pieces, because the fibers in chicken, you know, they don't tear properly unless you can use your cutter teeth, and I can't do that. Even if it's a really thick sandwich, I mean, I might be able to bite down into part of it, but I can't complete the slice. So I end up pulling half the sandwich out, and it's like, it's so embarrassing. It's like, now I'm complaining. These are physical things that I've had to deal with, on top of, you know, all the mental health and juggling the kiddos and the trauma of myself, trauma of them. You know, my husband was a great rock for that. He was always my voice. He was always the confidence that I wanted, because he, like I said, he would take a bullet for a stranger. He had the ability to, I wouldn't even say con. He was a bad liar. He was terrible at it. Like, it didn't even make any sense, the things he would say. But he would say them so well that it come across as genuine. So you stop to think about it, and you're like, wait a minute. Like, one time he came home and he said, oh, it took me a while to get the car done because the guys at Walmart that did our oil change decided to go on a test drive, and then they ran out of gas, and I got mad, and, you know, I had to stay there and fill out forms because, you know, they really just took my car out. They said they were testing it, but, like, his stories are so elaborate, you just know they're a lie. Like, I know that now. But at the time, you know, when people would hear these little stories, they think it's too elaborate not to be true. And so I would say to him, you know, after I sat down and I thought about it, and I was like, well, did they do anything about it? He's like, well, I filled out a form. And I was like, well, I'm kind of mad because that's actually my vehicle, because the vehicle's in my name. And I'm going to call Walmart, and I'm going to raise holy hell with the audit department for doing that. And be like, no, 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 I already took care of that. And I was like, that's not what happened. And then he would stop and look at me and be like, I went down to see the neighbor. Like, dude, that's so hard. Our neighbors are gay. Dude, I'm not even worried. It's not even like we have female neighbors. We don't have any female neighbors at all. Zero. And my husband is not gay. He used to fear gay people because of his abuse. Not only by his foster/adoptive mother, but also he was assaulted by 2 foster brothers. And so he feared all gay men for a long time. Honestly, the first encounter I had with him being near a gay man, he freaked out in a way like I couldn't even explain. I was in college. I invited him to come to lunch with me, and I had met this group of people that were fantastic. You know, I always thought, forget high school, and the future people would be just like them. No, college was totally different. These people were fantastic. I loved them. They were everything that I was. I actually even felt beneath them. I felt they were too good. And I brought him down there, and 3 of the guys at the table were gay. One of them was more of a flamboyant gay. He was very much feminine and would talk in the high-pitched voice, and he would do the fluffy hand thing, and he would style his hair, and he was really cool. But the other 2 were also gay, and, I mean, you wouldn't know unless I told you. I knew, but you wouldn't know. My neighbors are the same way. You wouldn't know unless I told you. Most people think they're just roommates because they don't go, oh, it's so serial. They don't do that. They giggle about it, and they'll say, oh, am I not gay enough for you? Hold on a minute. Let me try. And they're fun like that. I love them. But there was one at the table that just really was like that. And that was his personality. And honestly, I thought it was cool. He was just always so happy. And so the moment my husband sat down and this guy looked at, you know, one of the guys and was like, you know what I did today? My husband literally fell out of his chair. Like, they thought maybe it was an accident. But he actually had pushed himself away from the table almost instantly. And he fell backwards out of his chair. And he got up and ran. Literally ran out of the room. I was just like, what? What is that? Like, I couldn't even understand because he didn't say anything. And he left. He actually ran out of the dining room. Like, down the hall, and was almost out the door. And I was, like, running after him. Like, what are you doing? And he just said, you didn't tell me they were gay. And I was like, why does that matter? Like, they're fun. You know, what's wrong? And at the time, he hadn't really fully disclosed to me about his assault yet, because he didn't really know what had happened to him was wrong. Because, again, the woman that assaulted him, too, would justify it. Or she would tell him, actually, he was 6 years old when this happened to him. 6. His foster sister tells me the story all the time, because she's the one that pulled the boys off of him. And she was 16, so there's a 10-year gap between the 2 of them. And I'm still friends with her. I love her. She's got a bunch of kids, and they call me Aunt Jess. And even if there's no blood relation, I don't care. They're great. But, you know, there were these 2 foster brothers that were in their teens, and they were assaulting my husband. And it was rape. I mean, it was. But Cindy would tell him, you must be gay on the inside because you must have wanted it. It didn't even make sense. It's like, why are you telling a 6-year-old this? And she continued that behavior throughout his whole life, trying to tell him he was just a closeted man and that he just wanted to be like that. In fact, my stepson, the oldest one, is bisexual, and to this day, she will say, you're only like that because of things that happened to you in the past that honestly never even happened. And he has said that a million times. He's like, nobody's ever hurt me. What is wrong with you? But she still says that. I don't even know why he could stand to move back in with her. He just said, he said to me, if I just keep myself locked in the room and I stay away from her, I can hold off for a few months. And I was like, come on, kid. You know she's going to do something. He's like, I know. But as long as I can walk away before she calls the police or tries to gaslight me, I think I'll be okay. I'm like, please call somebody else. I'll do anything. And he just said, nope, I'm good. It'll be all right. I know what to do. I got a plan. I got a plan. I'm just going to lock myself in my room. I'm going to wait for the housing authority to call me, or I call them and they have an apartment for me, and then I'm out of there. But I can do this. I can do this. I know how she is. I'll just walk away. You know, I'll keep myself out of, you know, harm's reach. She's allowing me back in. First week, she stole his marijuana and his money, and he's calling me saying he wants to jump off the bridge. I mean, and I had to call crisis. So, again, you know, I hate this woman. Yeah, so my husband had a very volatile reaction to gay people. And because he assumed they were going to hurt him. He wouldn't say that. He just was mad to even be around them. Actually, his friends, one of them is still his best friend. When they first introduced him to our neighbors, they all knew my neighbors were gay, but they didn't tell him that. And so my neighbor actually thought my husband was attractive, and so he started hitting on him and saying nice things to him. And my husband thought he was straight, so he was just like, oh, that's really nice of you to say. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And meanwhile, his friends were giggling because they knew he had this reaction. Honestly, I get mad at, you know, his friends, and I will bring this up occasionally with them, like, you know, that was cold. You guys knew that he was scared, and his, you know, his past and how it affected him. You should have told him. And they said, well, we thought it was funny. And it was like, yeah, it's not funny. Thanks. And they've said they're sorry. And, but they waited. They waited until my neighbors had left. And honestly, they weren't even my neighbors back then. They were just part of the group. The house across the street that is rented by my neighbors is also owned by the same man that I rent from. So when that house opened up, they moved in. Honestly, it was supposed to go to my dad. And then my dad died. And they needed a place, so they moved right in. And that's how that happened. So, you know, they're our friends. And they have their problems. But, you know, I stay here, they stay there. We talk to each other. If they need help, I'll, you know, the one needs to go to dialysis, you know, every other day at this point. So I'll, you know, if their car breaks or they don't have a ride, I'll take them so that way they don't miss their appointment. And that's how we do with each other, you know. We help each other. We understand what each other's been through. And I mean, my college days were 2006, 2005, in that time zone. So, I mean, this is like 20 years ago. And so we've moved on past these times. But at the time, my husband he was deathly afraid of gay people. And that was his reaction from his trauma. And he just thought, they're going to hurt me. He was a big guy back then too. And I mean, I don't even mean like heavy set. He had muscles. He had good muscles. Honestly, I wasn't even attracted to the muscles. I was always attracted to his emotions. He and I met in 10th grade. So I'm almost there in my little story. And you know what? Take that back. It was 9th. Is the end of 9th. Like almost the very end. That I met him. And the first time I met him, he was crying. And it wasn't even like crying in the middle of the cafeteria, you know, somewhere he could, you know, be seen. He was crying because his first love, and, you know, this also tends to happen. People who are abused by older adults tend to go for older people. This girl that he loved, was a senior, and she was about 2 years older than him. Even the children that I raised, my stepchildren's mom, was older than he was. I mean, that because that's what he knows. But she was his first love, I guess you would call it. And he was scared that when she graduated, that he was never going to see her again. And so he asked her to marry him. She was all his first. And he loved her very much. He went out and he got her a ring. He proposed to her and she laughed in his face. And he was hurt. So there is this area in the school by the office. And, you know, a lot of people don't actually go over there, especially during the day. There's no reason to be over there unless you're going to the office. But he was out by the office and he was sitting on a bench and he was just head in his hands. And he wasn't even, like, you couldn't even tell he was crying. He was just kind of like, just sitting there, kind of numb. And my friend at the time, who's no longer my friend, I was walking with her, and she saw him too, and, you know, I said, "Aw, what's wrong?" And, you know, he put his hand up, because, you know, you just see that body language, you know, that whole, if their hands are in their face, and they're just sitting there for a while, and they're not even really moving, either they're asleep, or they're upset. I mean, if they were happy, they're gonna give off the happy vibe. But there was no happy vibe. His muscles all relaxed. He's just slumped over. He's just defeated. Honestly, that was the first time I saw a guy cry. Like, I didn't even see my dad cry. I mean, I saw my brothers cry. But they're my brothers, and they're little at the time. I mean, literally, I got a 10-year almost gap between me and my youngest brother. So, you know, I'm 9th grade, and, you know, my brothers are hitting kindergarten. So, it was weird. Like, I wasn't even used to that. It was just like, wow. It's not that I didn't know men couldn't cry. It's the fact that he was crying. Because it's like so against the norm, I guess. And it was that, you know, true sadness. And I don't like to say the whole love at first sight thing. But, you know, I think I was drawn to him in a way where, you know, I just wanted to help. And think that's kind of where he needed, in his mind, a motherly figure, and I kind of just did that. So we were kind of drawn to each other. No, we did not date right away. That came later. He actually dated the friend that was with me. And the next time I saw him after that day, and it was an accident. It actually took me years to actually realize that it was him. Because it, like, dawned on me. He was telling me the story, and I was like, wait a minute. That was you. Oh, my God. I didn't even know. But, you know, during a lunch period, about a week later, I was seeing, you know, everybody has their table. We didn't really have a table. We sit on the end. So, you know, the rest of the table is whoever. I don't know who they are, but we usually keep each, you know, 5 people in this little section. And we just say, you know, this is where we sit. This is where we mingle. I have like 5 other people, including my friend Mary. You know, we're sitting on this table, and while we're talking, I hear in my right ear, in particular, a slap. It was the loudest smack I'd ever heard, and it was so echoey that the whole cafeteria went quiet. And I was trying to figure out, like, what just happened. And then the classic "oh" starts happening in the cafeteria, and I turned my head. There he is. The girl that had laughed in his face when he asked her to marry him was sitting right next to me. I didn't know her. I just sat there because that was our spot. I didn't really talk to the people beside me on the other side. It was just, you know, these are my side and this is your side, and we're not gonna bother each other. And I was sitting right next to her. And what had happened was, he had gone up to her and he goes, "Guess what? I have another girlfriend." Bam! And she hit him. He was trying to, you know, macho up, like, "You didn't hurt me," because I bounced back, and oh, she hit him. Honestly, knowing him now, I am absolutely shocked he did not lose his ever-loving effing mind. Because when he got hit, his reactions were almost instantaneous. Just like my youngest stepson, blind rage. Like, he didn't want to hurt you. It was, "You're hurting me. So now I gotta all out or else." Now my stepson, he blind rages because he's just flat out mad. My husband was more like, "I gotta get you down before you get me down." I don't know what kept him from doing that day. But I remember his face. I remember the eyes being wide and just kind of in shock. Like, he didn't expect her to hit him. And he stood up. And he went back to where he was. And honestly, like, in that moment, I didn't process completely who that was. And then one day we were just talking about it. And he said, "Oh, that day that, you know, she dumped me and I was really hurt. And, you know, I went up to her and I said to her, you know, guess what? I have another girlfriend." She hit me in the middle of the cafeteria. And, you know, everybody was like, "Ooh." I was like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I had to think back about it. And I was like, oh my God, that was you. Years later, it's computing to me now that I did see him after that. Because the next time I thought I saw him was when they were dating and during band camp, because he joined the band and I was in the band. And that is how we truly were able to communicate and learn about each other. He likes to tell the story to our children that even though he was dating my friend, I played the flute, she played the flute. So, you know, we would sit next to each other. And that's, you know, the only communication I even had with her, because she was a little older than me. She was 1 year older than me. And so, 1 grade above. And he was the lead drummer. So he had the big old bass drum. So every time we took a break for band, he would come back and he would sit with us. And so he likes to tell our children the story of when he, quote, fell in love. We were sitting there and we were on the ground, literally just sitting on the ground outside. And he liked to drum. So I had my foot in a weird way where it's kind of like this, where I'm, you know, I have it's outside ways. And he starts drumming on my shoe right here. He misses. He hit my ankle. Ow, that hurt. And the moment he did that, he freaked out. He was just like, oh, "I'm so sorry." Like, he doesn't want to hurt anybody. Like I said, like, the idea of hurting somebody freaks him out. So he handed me his mallet and he goes, "Oh my God, you have to hit me back." And I was like, "What? No, I'm not hitting you." And my friend, you know, said, "Well, I'll do it." And he said, "Oh, no, you'll hurt me." And I don't know why, but what I said to him was, "Are you calling me weak?" And I hit his knee. And he says that our children, "That's when I fell in love." I was like, what? I mean, okay, cute. My daughter actually had told that she's in the band now. She plays the clarinet. And during her senior night this past week, actually, she had her father's name announced. And she was telling the instructor, who is now the son of the instructor that her dad and I had, all about it. She's like, oh, my dad and mom fell in love in the band, and they were playing, and my dad was playing her shoe, and he hit her ankle, and she hit him in the knee, and he said he fell in love with her. We did not cheat. Actually, his girlfriend at the time, who was my friend, she used to tell me stories. Most of them I didn't believe, because I thought she was just one of those kids trying to get attention. She would literally tell me about 5 different guys, and I'm pregnant by one, I'm marrying another, I made out with this one, and I'm seeing this one tonight. And it's like, okay, whatever. I didn't believe a word of it, because none of it made sense. Occasionally she'd be like, let's go outside, one of them's going to come see me. And I'm like, okay. And I go outside, and she'd be like, oh, he must be busy today. And I'm like, uh-huh. And I felt bad for her. I figured something's wrong if she's going to do this. So I'm just going to go with it, whatever. Well, one day she said, let's go out there. And she's telling, my husband, who was her boyfriend at the time, oh, just stay here in the band room. It'll be all right. And we go outside, and she goes, he'll be here any minute. And I'm like, uh-huh. So I'm waiting for the whole, he got pulled away or something. Or maybe he got busy, or maybe he got a job interview, something. Here comes this man. I mean, he's not a kid. He's not a teenager. He is a man. He's actually one of the teacher's brothers. He's in his late 30s. And he's kind of walking up, and he comes and grabs her butt. And I was like, what? Like, who are you? And I was just trying to compute what was going on. Like, what? Now, she's 17, so she's, at the time, legal age, because unfortunately, I say this, unfortunately, 16 is the age of consent in Pennsylvania. And she was full on consent, but it was like, what the fuck is happening here? And he's making out with her, and I'm feeling so uncomfortable, like, you're a grown man, and you're grabbing on a teenager, and this is really wrong. I feel very uncomfortable right now. And she has this Hershey bar, and she tries to actually shove it in his pocket, and he goes, oh, I don't want that, I don't want that. And I turn around, because, like, I'm thinking to myself, my husband's, her boyfriend, again, it's a wrong to me. I can't just not. I can't. It's just like, what the? He's in the band room. This is happening. What is happening? I actually turned around, because I was like, I gotta get back to the band room. And as I turned around, this man actually took this chocolate bar, and he shoved it in my back pocket. I turned around, and I screamed, don't you fucking touch me. Like, I'm about to, like, crazy karate chop. Like, something like, I'm gonna flip out, don't touch me, you weirdo. She's like, what is wrong with you? And I was like, I need to get it. I'm going back in. I'm going back in. And I go back in. He is literally, my husband, sitting there on the chair, hand in his head, just waiting. Where's she at? What's she doing? And I'm like, she's out there with another man. It came right out. And he stood up. He's like, what? And I said, no, please don't. She's going to whoop my ass if she finds out I said that. Later that night, he actually called me with her on the phone. And he was trying to confront her about it. And she goes, he's saying that you said this about me. And I said, no, I didn't. I'm a bad liar, too. That's why I don't. And I was just, no. No, I didn't. I don't know what you're talking about. And the next day, he comes up to me, why did you say that? I was like, dude, she's gonna kill me. Okay, she's crazy. To boot. If she finds out that I told you any of that, she's gonna kill me. Why? Don't bring that up to her. I'm like, I'm telling you what it is, but she'll kill me. Please don't. And that next week, he dumped her. And, of course, she hated me after that. But she had her new boyfriend. And she had several after that. But she was mad. Because then he started following me around. And he actually asked to date me. And at the time, I was still dating that online guy that I met. And I did not feel comfortable with that. I told him so. I said, oh, well, I have a boyfriend. And I don't cheat. I don't believe in that. It's, my father's cheated on my mom a whole lot. And I've seen what that does. I can't do this. And, so actually after some time, and I thought about it, my boyfriend and I had broken up. And, once again, we're going for, actually it's a band day. We're going to go to the football stadium. My mom at the time, actually, she thought he was attractive, and she was excited that, you know, an actual man, I mean, he wasn't even a man. I mean, at the time, again, we're 2 years apart. So by the time I'm hitting 10th grade, he's a senior. So, he was the most respectful person I'd ever met. So he'd asked me out again, and I said okay. But I told him I had stipulations. I was not comfortable with anything. I was a virgin at the time, so I was not comfortable with doing anything. I said to him, I don't even want to hug you. I really don't. I don't feel comfortable yet. I'm still hurt over, you know, what this other guy did, and it's only been 2 years. I mean, I've completely skipped over the story here to the meeting of my husband, so I'll have to go backwards in my next videos, and I'll probably have to try and catch up between the end of 8th grade and 9th grade until this point. But I think, you know, just talking about something good, he respected those boundaries. I'd never met anybody like that. Like, I said no hug, and he said, okay, would I be able to hold your hand? And I said, yes, that would be fine. And so we held hands that day, and he knew I wasn't comfortable with anybody trying to gift me things, so he didn't try to overdo that. He was more attention to emotion, and I needed that. I needed that level of respect. That kind of. And he wanted somebody to care about him and, you know, mother him. Yeah, he gets kind of mad sometimes, and he'll say, you know, thanks, Mom. As I still kind of do that. And, but he's always been attentive to, my feelings. He's always been sensitive to, you know, if I'm feeling down. If I have a tone, he'll always say, what's wrong? He always told me he loved me. He won't end a phone call without it. He always gave me a hug goodbye. I mean, we weren't all over each other like crazy or anything. Honestly, we just hug each other. I miss. Obviously we separated. Oh my goodness. At least 2 hours in. Now I'm doing this. And I'm gonna end this soon. But obviously we had broken up for a time where he met his first wife. And he married her when he graduated. And honestly, that's gonna... There's a lot that went on that year. I never got to go to a dance with him. Because even though my mom encouraged the relationship at the beginning, he knew that she hurt me. And he tried to protect me. And because she had a nursing license, an allegation of abuse would have taken away her license. The first time I ever had interaction with child services, and they literally questioned me while she was staring at me. But he wanted me to be safe. And I wasn't allowed to see him after. Locked in my house. Never allowed to leave. I got a job. The moment he was able to walk in, it was a skating rink. I mean, just came to say hi. She called my boss and said I couldn't work there anymore. And she had that power. This is why I go back to my stepdaughter's abusive boyfriend. I knew that if I tried to cut her off, she would do what I did. I snuck out. I loved him so much. I was willing to do anything to be with him. And he respected everything that I asked. Oh God, I was hoping I was going to be able to end this without freaking out. Oh man. You know, everything I thought I could have in my high school year, I saw I could have with him. She took all of it away. Because I couldn't be with him. He felt, you know, like his needs weren't being met either. Because we couldn't go out. The only time we saw each other was when we snuck around. So in the end, you know, Catherine was, from his previous school, he knew her. They ran into each other. They liked each other again. And he could have, you know, a dating relationship, a normal dating relationship. I couldn't. And we broke up. I married her. My friend died. And then I went to the junior prom the following year, and that is where, like I said before, my friend promised that I'd be able to see somebody. He was the one. And the friend that promised this was the ex-girlfriend. The one that no longer is friends with me, who hated me. And I think she thought it was a big joke. She knew I wanted to see him. It been 2 years for her. She was long over him. But she enjoyed causing people pain. I swear she did. So she promised if I went to the prom. And again, I did it more for my other friend. But she promised, hey, I'll get in touch with him and I'll get him to come see you. But at the time, to me, it didn't even matter if he was married. I missed him. I know that sounds terrible. But I mean, honestly, that didn't even happen. He didn't come because she didn't call him because she had no real way to do it. In fact, the actual only reason that he and I got back together was because his ex-wife called me. She wasn't even his ex yet. She was jealous of me without even knowing who I was. Because she began to become volatile and violent, and she actually tried to stab him at one point. And so she started hunting me down. She came to my workplace. She'd follow me around because she, in her head, she thought he was seeing me, and he wasn't. She'd constantly badger him about it, constantly bring me up. Because she didn't feel like, you know, he wasn't even doing anything. they had their child. They had the oldest one. And he wasn't even doing anything. And she hunted me down. She was relentless. If I said anything back on MySpace, my goodness, she would try and decode it into, oh, she must be seeing him. And I'm like, I'm not seeing him. In fact, actually, I got back together with the guy that I had online. And we were recommunicating and talking, and she kept insisting that we must be seeing each other. We must be seeing each other. We were not seeing each other at all. We were completely separated that entire year. And actually, the beginning of my senior year, about a week. No. A week into school. Not a week prior. A week into school. She got my phone number. Because she hunted me down at work and she went, boo-hoo-hoo, we're breaking up. And I took pity on her. And she caused me a lot of problems. But I don't want to hurt somebody when they're down. So I just said to her, it's okay. You know, I'm not seeing you. I don't know how else to explain this. And the craziest thing happened. She was talking like they were totally breaking up and she needed a friend. And I gave her my number. And she did the craziest thing. She called me. And she said, I'll end it with this. Because this is half and half. Good and bad and weird at the same time. She called me and she said, I need you to three-way call him and get him to tell you if he has seen you or not. I was like, what? No. And I just told her I wasn't comfortable with that because I hadn't seen him. Actually, I had worked at the skating rink, like I said. And the skating rink had actually burned down. And the last time I had seen him, he had come to the rink with her on opening day. And he actually came up to the counter and he was smiling at me. And I actually kind of went into a panic. And because my old feelings were just coming right up. And I actually told my boss, I said, I need a break. And because he smiled at me and he said he was happy to see me. And she was right there. There it went. Oh, they must be seeing each other. They got into a full-blown argument and left almost immediately. So, you know, I was not comfortable with seeing him. I knew I wouldn't be able to handle even talking with him. So what she did was she said, hold on, I have a phone call. And this is back in the day where when you wanted a three-way call, you had to purposely put the other person on hold. So what she did was she told me she had a call coming in. And, oh goodness, there we go. Well, I got some time in between. Yes.
What is your problem?
I'm going to go upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go upstairs.
You know what? I'll do one better. I'll go outside. I'm almost done. Now we have to deal with cars. So, she put me on hold, and she came back, and she had muted herself. And, all I hear is his voice, and he's saying hello. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I don't even want to say anything, so I didn't. And he just kept on hello, like he was irritated. And I just said hi, because then I felt bad. And he said, who's this? And I said, I don't know. I didn't know what to say. I was almost in a full-blown panic. And I wouldn't doubt she's right outside the door. he kept saying, well, who is this? I don't know who this is. And actually, at one point, I said, who do you think it is? And he goes, I don't know. And I was like, well, you're going to have to guess, because I'm not going to tell you. He's like, well, I don't know who this is. And he's like, who is this? And I said, who do you think it is? He's like, I don't know. Who is this? And I said, I don't know who you think it is. And then he pauses for a minute. And he says, Jess? And I was like, again, I'm a terrible liar. Can't lie, really. And the strangest thing happened. He immediately started, like, he wasn't yelling. It just sounded really hyped up. He goes, oh my God, I've missed you so much. He says, I cannot. He said, everything I did was a mistake. I love you, I miss you, I've been thinking about you all the time. I want to see you. And his, even though they were separated, wife, Catherine, she unmuted herself. I knew it! And it was like, starts screaming. And she just went bananas. And I was like in fear. And she wasn't even accusing us of seeing each other. She was more accusing the fact that he thought of me still. She was mad about that. And so, I mean, I proved to her that we weren't seeing each other, but yeah, well, my dad did what my mom wanted. She didn't want me to see him, so I didn't. So we had this it's a 2-story house, but the basement, because it's off of a hill, the basement kind of goes out directly out into the wilderness. So it's almost like a 3rd floor. So I'm down there, and I'm on the phone, and she's screaming so loud, and yeah, I'm like looking around. My dad comes down the stairs, and he's looking at me like, who's on the phone? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm afraid of him at this point. Like, oh shit. Like, I'm not supposed to talk to him, because if I talk to him, I get in trouble. I get hurt. Things get taken away. I get threats. I don't want it. I don't want that. And so he picks my phone out of my hand, and he puts it to his ear. He goes, is that him? And I said, I didn't call him. I was like, I did not call him. She called me. She called me, and she put me on 3. I didn't call him. Like, I'm almost in full defense mode. Like, I'm not even worried about those two anymore. I'm worried that my dad's gonna, like, go bananas. And he takes the phone, and he hangs it up, and he takes it away. And I was like, I'm getting in trouble. Thanks. I was 18 years old. 18. My senior year. And he takes my phone. I don't even fight back. I was just like hanging my head. And I didn't really know what to do. And we had to go to band that night. And I cannot believe this, but my husband actually had memorized my home phone number. We hadn't seen each other in a year, but he still remembered that number. So the moment my dad hung up, he called my house. It's like it didn't even bother him anymore that we weren't supposed to see each other. I think he just remembered that I would have been 18 at that point, and he wanted to see me. And so he called, and he left a message. I heard, you know, back in the day when the answering machines, like if somebody picked up, you could hear it echoing through the house. It wasn't like it quietly recorded the answering machine. It was one of those, you can yell into the answering machine, hey, I know you're home, pick up the phone. He didn't do that, of course. He said, Jess, please call me back. I really want to talk to you. I really want to see you. And he said, I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry. You know, please call me back. And he was rambling off his number. And my mom went over there and was delete. I already heard it. And actually, I felt really bad. I felt so bad. I felt like I needed to apologize to him. So later that day, we had band that night. And I knew that my dad would give me back my phone. Because obviously I had to tell them when the band's over and he's going to come get me, because at the time, even though I had procured my license in my own way, because they tried to stop me from getting that, I needed that phone. So my dad gave it to me, and he told me, well, I believe you. And I was like, well, thank God, because that is the truth. I did not call him. She called me, and she put that situation down. I don't even know. And so I called him, you know, before the band went off to the stadium. And I told him, you know, what had happened. I told him I was sorry, that I did not deliberately call him, that I didn't know that she was going to do that. That she called me, and she was making assumptions, and, you know, this had happened. And he said, well, I still want to see you. And I just told him, I said, well, I don't know how to make that happen. And I said, you know, I'm dating this, you know, kind of dating the guy online. He was from Akron, actually. Honestly, it's not even that far away from here. It's a drive, but it's not terrible. But honestly, we didn't see each other either. But it didn't really bother me. Long distance really didn't bother me. It was always about the affection, about the talk, and of course, well, this kid started to pull away from me too. And he was saying, you know, he didn't think we were going to work out anyway, just because of the long distance. And honestly, I wasn't all that hurt about it either. But I wasn't really sure if we were officially broken up or not. But I just told my husband at the time, like, I don't feel comfortable with this. You know, I don't think it's appropriate if we see each other one-on-one. You're still married. And he said, no. He's like, it wouldn't be alone. He said, I have a few other people here, and I'll make sure you're safe. You know, I just want to talk to you. And my better judgment was more like going out the window, because I really did miss him, and I really did want to see him. So I said, okay. I said, you'll have to, the way we would sneak out was I would go out that third-story door, and I'd actually walk 2 houses down to a golf course, and that's how we used to sneak away. So he went down to the golf course, and I walked over there in the middle of the night, and hopped in the car, and I went to his house, and, well, the rest is we were back together. Without going into all the gritty details. It was pretty simple. It was, once again, that respect level. I was, you know, he was very kind to me. He was apologizing to me that the situation was there, but then he was telling me about his life with his wife, and how, you know, at first he thought, you know, knowing her only a little bit, that she would be okay, and, you know, they could be trauma bonded too, because again, she's got trauma, he's got trauma, just like I have trauma, so it's easy for us to bond. He said, but once he was actually with her, it was constantly, like, he couldn't do anything. She was constantly hurting him. She was constantly destroying things, burning things of his. Like, she would just make assumptions out of nowhere, like, you must be doing something, and he wasn't doing anything. And you know, it was getting to a point where they were separating, because he didn't even break up with her. She was the one going, I'm dumping you, because you must be doing all these things. And at the time, he was just more like, whatever, I don't even care anymore. You know, these other people at the house are telling me the same thing. They're like, man, that woman's crazy. Like, she's like sniffing his clothes. She won't let him get a job. Anytime he gets a job, he has to come home. He went with his dad once, and she made up something so he would come home. And, you know, he wasn't allowed to do anything. He wasn't allowed to leave. Or else. Like, she had to see him all the time, or else he must be doing something. And, you know, okay. Well, I'll end it there. Because it's been almost 2.5 hours. It's probably the longest video I've done. I didn't even mean to go off on that tangent. But it was, from then on, I mean, it was kind of off and on for about 2 years. It was officially the end of 2007 that he moved in with me, and he filed for divorce. So he was still married to her the whole time we were back and forth seeing each other. And honestly, I mean, it got a lot more complicated than that even. And I really just don't want to... Man, this video, I'll probably max out my phone. This is why I said, like, I have to slow things down. Because especially once I leave the school year type thing, and I'm starting to bounce to situation, it's going to be difficult to follow. I've sat on the phone with therapists, or a therapist has hung out with me for hours while we just talk about everything. I mean, we don't fully go into full detail like this. I give them the shorter version. You guys are getting the longer one. Occasionally they get the bits and pieces later, but our first conversation is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and today. It still takes 4 hours to get through. I've gotten into the night to where I'm looking out the window going, oh my god, it's 11 o'clock. Thank goodness she's a BSc. She has all these hours. I have a neighbor pulling. So I'm gonna end. There he goes. See you guys next time. I'm probably gonna have to take the next one outside because now she's really gonna be like, what are you doing? If she keeps hearing this, I don't want to also re-trigger her, especially when I have to talk about things that happened to her. Because she'll get super emotional. I mean, just showing her, like, hey, look, I have this cup. And, you know, it's because we went to court all the time. She's like, yeah, I know. I remember all that. And then she just gave me a look like, yeah, I don't want to talk about that. It's like, yeah, I know you don't. I don't want to talk about it. So, I'll let y'all go, and I'll see you next time.